Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're watching this. What we're going to look at is metacognition. It's a term that we use to try to describe that how our mind works and things that you do that get in the way, the things that you do that work well, what's behind that, and what you can do about it. So, if you would just turn off whatever's going around you and just try to be present and just see what resonates with you, and we'll move forward. Well, got a bunch of bumblebees up here, and if you've ever looked at the shape of a bumblebee, you wonder how in the world can that thing fly with all the technology that we have to understand nature around us. The bumblebee, if you look at its shape, it should not be able to fly. It doesn't have enough wings to support its weight, the shape of it, all of those things, and yet it can fly anyway. And well, we ask, well, why? Why can it fly? How can it do that? Well, its focus is on I can rather than I can't. It's no different than you. Really, all you ever have to spend in life is your attention. And are you spending it in the direction of what you can do or what you can't do? And who decides? You do. So let's just move forward and look at it. Hopefully, all of you are here in college at Delgado for the reason of trying to enter the job market. Somebody's been feeding you, taking care of you, and at some point you're going to have to do that on your own. So you've been going to school and learning things all your life, right? And you face things. And what do you face? People misunderstand what learning is and how we learn. And what they notice is they notice when you do things wrong. And so what you do is pick that up, and you notice what you do when you do things wrong. Do you ever notice what you do when you do things well? Or you just ignore that? Wow. Well, let's look at what's behind that.
95% of our life is coming from the programs of life, how to live life that we get in the first 7 years of life. That's why poor people stay poor and rich people stay rich. The movie The Matrix is not science fiction. It's a documentary. Every human, this is a fact, every human first 7 years is download the hypnosis. The brain of a child under 7 is in a lower vibrational frequency. When you put wires on the person's head, you read electroencephalograph, reading brain activity. A child below 7 has a lower vibration than consciousness. It's called theta. Theta is imagination. Oh, that's how kids play a tea party with mud pies, but to them it's a real thing. A kid rides a broom, it's a horse. That's theta, imagination. Theta is also hypnosis. And the idea is this: before you can become conscious, if you don't have any programs, what are you going to be conscious of? So nature makes the first 7 years. What kind of programs are required to live on this planet? I say, how do you get them? Theta is hypnosis. You just watch. You watch your parents, you watch your siblings and your community, because you have to learn how many 100,000 rules. Think about it. Just to be a functional member of a family and a functional member of a community, there are rules. Teach an infant these rules. Say, you don't have to. First 7 years, they observe it and just download it. Look, this is not new. I mean, there's a famous book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And basically said you come from a poor family and you could struggle your whole life and try to get rich, but you're not going to make it. And if you come from a rich family, you could be stupid your whole life and make it. Not because it was thinking, but it was unconscious behavior that was downloaded from rich families and the kids, which is unconscious. So they're making the right moves unconsciously. If they engage their conscious mind, then they look stupid, but it's unconscious. And that's the same thing with poor people. Poor people have beliefs from the family. Oh, you can't make it, life's a struggle, things are hard, who do you think you are? And if that's the program you get, then 95% of the day you will sabotage yourself. And that's why poor people stay poor and rich people stay rich, because the program. 95% of our life, is a fact, comes from those programs in the subconscious. every day. Only about 5% of their life are you using conscious, which is creative. 5%.
So your life is being lived, even though you think you're living your life.
Exactly. And you don't see it because it's called subconscious, below conscious. And the Jesuits for 400 years, they were boasting. People didn't understand. They say, give me a child until it's 7 and I will show you the man. They've been saying that for 400 years because they knew 7 years was the program period. And 95% of your life after that will be whatever that program is. So you don't have to try and think about what happened. I just said, look at your life. The things you like that come into your life come in because you have a program that supports them. But anything you struggle with, work hard at, put a lot of effort into making it happen while you're working so hard, inevitably, you have a program that doesn't support that conclusion and you're trying to override the program. So you don't need to do a lot of strength and psychology stuff. You just look at your life and say, where am I struggling? Because wherever you're struggling, inevitably it's a program in your subconscious that does not support that destination you've been looking for. The conscious mind is creative and can learn in any number of ways. Read a self-help book, go to a lecture, listen to this program, and conscious mind is going to get some awareness. And I go, yeah, but subconscious mind doesn't learn that way. I go, right, it doesn't. Subconscious mind learns in 2 fundamental ways naturally. Hypnosis, which is the first 7 years. And after age 7, how do you put new programs in? Repetition, practice. You want to drive a car, you didn't learn how by just getting in the seat and put the key in. You had to practice driving the car. You want to learn the alphabet. How many times did you go from A to Z? Try to go to A to Z before you can complete it. And once you completed it, you didn't have to go back and do it again. So 2 phases. You want to train the subconscious mind, hypnosis, repetition. I like the last one because there's a new phrase that's bandied about called fake it till you make it. Meaning, if you're not a happy person, I say you want to be a happy person, then repeat all the time. I'm happy. I'm happy. I say, well, you don't look happy or anything. Say, no, who am I talking to? By repetition, I'm talking to subconscious. If subconscious gets, I am happy, and 95% of your life comes from that subconscious, there will be a point once the subconscious got, I am happy, you don't have to say it again.
Okay.
It'll be automatic.
And that's why we see people do affirmations and gratitude journals and stuff, because if you do that daily,
It's repetitive, and that's the secret part. Look, putting a sticky note on the refrigerator is more like a suggestion, but it's not a repetition. So it doesn't work very well. But you have to do repetition is a habit. It's making habit. So you got to do something religiously in the sense of repeating it to make it work.
Wow. So have you noticed yourself expecting obstacles in life? Some people do, some people don't. Based on the yard you grew up in, your zip code, huh? So what's the difference between a stumbling block and a stepping stone? They're both rocks. It's got nothing to do with the fact of what it is, right? The rock itself. It's how you perceive it. And to some people, it's just something they blame. Oh, that's what got in my way, this and that. And other people, they just look at it as an opportunity to be able to get where they want to go. Wow.
It took about 20 years before science owned what I was talking about. If you understand epigenetics, you don't need the pharmaceutical industry. That's not in the interest of one of the biggest industries on this planet to say you can heal yourself without drugs. I go, absolutely. Look, I can feed you with an idea that this pill that we just got from the pharmaceutical company, it's the greatest, best thing for your issue. And I give you this pill and you get better. And then later you find out it was a sugar pill and everybody goes, yeah, that's called the placebo effect. And I go, what does it really mean? I said, you didn't get healed by the pill, you got healed by the belief in the pill. At least 1/3, minimum of 1/3 of all medical intervention is it's a placebo effect that the healing comes from. Everybody goes, yeah, I know about the placebo. I go, yeah, but that's a result of positive thinking. What about negative thinking? And this is what we don't talk about, but the reality is it's equally powerful in regard to affecting your biology as is positive thinking, but it works in the opposite direction. A negative thought is called a nocebo effect. Can cause any disease and you can die. If you believe you're going to die, you can die from the belief. So we really have to watch out because as psychologists would tell us 70% or more of our thoughts are negative and redundant, we're playing the same negative thoughts. I go, if thoughts have nothing to do with it, fine. But thoughts, positive or negative, shape our biology. And all of a sudden it says, well, now it's time to wake up because our negative thinking is manifesting a negative life experience. It took about 20 years before science owned what I was talking about and gave it the name epigenetics. That's the new science.
Okay, which is the belief that through your behavior, you can kind of alter your genetics, pass those on, express it differently. I'm probably using the wrong words.
Well, pretty close, right?
People talk about it as a reality, although it's still not totally understood or totally believed.
It is now. It is a science. It's a hard science, and it's the leading edge. Now, I'll tell you where the problem comes from. Not so much the scientists, but the pharmaceutical industry. And the reason why this becomes important is because the pharmaceutical industry runs the show in medicine. And if you could put this kind of healing that I'm talking about into a capsule or tablet, they'd be talking about it right now. But this is a consciousness healing, and you can't sell it. And so what's the result? They're not interested in it. And they, through their money, which is massive, actually determine the curriculum in the medical school. And one of the things they're trying to get rid of are people who respond to the placebo effect, because the placebo effect throws the data right off the chart. A simple fact is this, and people might be upset, but the drugs like Prozac in laboratory tests are no better than a sugar pill. And that's how many billions of dollars a day on this planet is spent buying Prozac. Yeah. Or statin drugs. Statin drugs help less than 3% of the people that take them. And in fact, they cause side effects that are dangerous in about 23%. So you help 3% with a drug, 23% are getting toxic from the drug. And the idea is these are drugs that, how long do you take statins? How long do you plan to live? Yeah. It's like, oh my God, that's they're drug dealers. Look, it's advertised every 10 minutes on television. There's a new drug or a drug, and it's put into their heads like, your life's not working right. This drug, look at the happy people. See, they've taken the drug and how happy they are. And people buy that story. And pharmaceutical drugs kill about 300,000 people a year. And everybody's, that's just the cost of doing medicine. And yet they have a war on drugs, which kill less than 30,000 people a year. And all of a sudden you got a war because 30,000 people died, 300,000 people died. That's business as usual.
How do we break this cycle? How do you fight these huge companies?
Basically stop buying a product. And you say, but how can I stop buying a product? And the answer is, well, empower yourself because you're the one that controls all this. Any drug that affects you, you got to understand this. If I take a drug and it affects me, the reason why it affects me is because I have a natural equivalent of that drug in my own biology. You don't take a drug and it affects you and you have a receptor for that drug, like you were having this protein receptor for a drug you may never take. That would be silly. So if you have a receptor for a drug, then by definition, that receptor was already there because there's a natural drug. So in smoking pot, everyone, oh, no, there's a drug called tetrahydrocannabinol. And guess what? You have receptors for it because you make your own. So the idea is this. Well, if you want to have the effect of the drug, do you have to take an outside drug? I said, no, you have to change your consciousness because you already manufacture every equivalent of a drug right now. And the idea is, if you're not manufacturing it, then that means your consciousness is not supporting you in your health. And it's really an adjustment of consciousness, not an adjustment of your biology.
So we have a term that we're going to look at today, metacognition. Cognition is just a word that uses to describe our ability to think about our thoughts, to think about how we're processing thought, what we're doing with it, like inside. We can notice how we're functioning. And when you do that, And meta is like bigger than, before than. That's, we're looking at, we're the force, that the invisible force that's at play with thought, which is nothing but a vibrating energy. So you can't see any of this, but we see the effect, just like all the things that we talk about in automotive technology or any other technical industry. There are forces at play that are unseen, and we don't see the force, we see the effect of the force. So metacognition is understanding how your mind works. That's basically all it is. You don't have to go into big technical details about it. It's really, really a simple thing. And that is what empowers people to change how they perceive life, how they perceive that rock, right? That stumbling stone, and it becomes a stepping stone for them. So what is metacognition? Right? It's just realizing how your mind works. You already have the ability to think about your own thinking, noticing how it feels. What Dr. Lipton was pointing to, especially in the last video, was that it affects our biology. We actually feel our thinking. We feel the effect it has on our biology. So you don't have to notice what you're thinking all the time. You just automatically, your navigation system is how you feel. Your feeling lets you know, hey, are you looking in this direction or in that direction? Right? We're free to think anything we want. But if it feels bad, after a while, you go, well, it's just not worth going there. So I'm going to go the other direction. So we can think about our own thinking and become aware of your ability to process thoughts, right? How your mind is functioning with that. And you can see yourself in your mind, see yourself as a problem solver or not. And if you don't see yourself as a problem solver, you won't be a problem solver. You'll sabotage yourself all the time. But if you do see yourself as a problem solver, then you'll gain that ability, because that's something that you want to do. You're pointing your attention in that direction. And when you see how your mind already works, but you can use it on purpose, huh? You can use the tool of your mental capacity to process thinking. You can plan how you're going to use it. You can control how much you use it, how little you use it, when you use it, and monitor the effect that you're producing by the way you're playing with it. So you can accurately assess your level of learning. Oh, that means that there are different ways of using it, and there are different levels of learning, and where we're attaching those thoughts that we're processing, whether in short-term memory or long-term memory. Wow. And when you know what you know, you also see the other side of the coin, the same coin, that says you know what you don't know. And when you realize what you don't know, that's what creates the choice in your life, that you can either keep doing the same thing and be ignorant of that subject, or you can choose to look in that direction and start inquiring and ask questions and all that, so that you can become that, whatever it is that is for you. When you're not aware of what you know, then you're not aware of what you don't know, and you can't ask a question. There's no choice for you. So you just stay in the same little small area. That's what you call your reality. So what is metacognitive equity? Well, this understanding that the discrepancy just means there's a difference, huh? There's a difference in the way we use our ability to process thinking, to process thoughts. And that's what metacognition is. So if you grew up in a certain yard, right, and you were in a certain zip code, then you went to school with people who were in the same zip code, and they had similar yards, rules in their yard that they learned just like you learned. And so it was repetitive. And the people who played in that yard of that school repeated that same way of being in the world, and you get really good at it, even if it stinks. If it's really good, really bad, doesn't matter. You can get to look good at anything that you put your attention to. And the same with people who came from a different background, a different yard. The rules were different. They absorbed those rules, right? And then they went to school when they got table high, right? They went to schools with other people who had similar yards, and they got repetitive reinforcing those same rules. And so that became the automation, right? We'll call it when things are automatic for you. It's just been conditioned repeatedly to where you become that, right? Like riding a bicycle. When you first read about bicycle, right? You see a bicycle, there's these pedals, there's handlebars, there's tires, and you're supposed to move all these things in a certain way. And it just seems confusing. And then all of a sudden you get it and it just makes sense. It becomes automatic. Then after that, you get on the bicycle and just go where you want to go because you're operating in that automatic mode of being that Dr. Lipton was pointing to. And so, you have schools that become majority, minority, right? If you look like this and everybody looks like this, well, the ones that look the most a certain way go, well, that's the majority and the minority is the few, right? So however you slice it and dice it, you have been playing in environments that repeat the same behaviors. So you get good at it, whether it serves you or not. And as an end result, you wind up being either underprepared for life on your own or well prepared for life on your own based on the programming that you have, the things, the rules that you learned growing up. Not right or wrong, put that stick down. It does nothing but you use it because you learned to beat yourself because all the people in your world pointed at when you did things wrong. They never even noticed when you did things right. So what did you learn to do? Same thing. You notice when you do things wrong and you beat yourself with the stick of blame. Oh, something wrong with me. I must be defective. The hardware is not defective. It's just the programming, the instructions you're playing with. So this is just the same thing, just describing where it comes from, the research that's been done to put facts on a page that says, yep, that's how it is. So what do you have to change to keep getting the same results that you're already getting? What do you have to change to keep getting the same results? Absolutely nothing. You just keep doing the same thing. You just keep going around and around in a circle. You'll produce the same effect. Well, if you don't know there's anything else to do, why would you even consider doing anything else? So that's just what you learned. Well, if you see people who produce a different behavior, it's because they have different way of processing thought. And they become, see, we can make the word productive and unproductive. It's really simple. If all you're doing is you put in a certain way of playing and you point it towards an effect. You say, I want to go there. That's a goal. I want to do that. And the effort you put in, if it produces that effect, then you say, well, that was productive, right? I got some benefit from it. Well, if you put in the effort and it produces the opposite effect that you wanted, right, against the way that your goal was going, then you get discouraged. You say that's unproductive behavior, right? And what do you think the effect of that repeatedly doing? You just quit putting in the effort because there's no point. It just feels bad. So that's the way we sabotage ourselves because we don't know anything different to do. That's all that we learned. That's all the programming that was in there. So here's some data from a community college. And they have a term up here, at-risk students. There was a sample of 9 at-risk students. Well, at-risk is nothing more than you have a people group or an organization that plays a certain way, right? Schools are just a group of people that play a certain way, and they have rules on their playground like everybody else does. And if you play by the rules, they're just going to turn how you play into a number, right? That's your grade. That's all a school does. And if you play well with others and you progress in the direction that they're pointing in, they go, hey, good job. And you give a number, right? Well, if you don't play well with others, you don't play the way the other people are playing, you're at risk of being kicked out of their yard. So that's what the at risk is about. So you can see things didn't start off too good. So this group of people, they were faced with a comprehensive exam, and comprehensive just means what you start here, you learn about this, you learn A, B, C, D, whatever it is, and the final quiz covers all of that. That's all comprehensive means. And they started off, took these at-risk students and they broke them up into groups like we do in a lot of our labs, right? We work together, and they assign them just a portion of the material to learn, right? To review that in preparation for the final exam, and break it down into manageable pieces. And here was one of the students there, and we taught them how they learn. Dana, she's a first-year student, right? Just entry level, like many people are, right? You start something off and things don't work so good. Well, what was she bringing to the party? Before metacognition, before she learned about how she functioned, right? All she did was she brought with her the rules of the previous game she was playing. In elementary school and then in high school, it basically play the parrot game. It's a level of learning that's real the bottom level. It's just memorizing things, like putting stuff in there so you can regurgitate it, right? If you give it back, then they go, hey, good job, right? And move you on to the next grade. You don't have to understand it. You might, but it's not what's required. It's not the focus. They're only playing with one type of learning. And so she learns how she functions and realizes that there are different ways of playing with how she processes thought. So afterwards, she's solving problems on her own without any external assistance, right? And understanding the material, being able to digest it. And her score is her feedback, right? It's just a result that happens because of how she's playing with her mental abilities. So let's let her talk to us.
Hi, my name is Dana Lewis Derby, and I am a former student of Dr. McGuire's, and she asked for me to share a little bit of my story with you today. So I met Dr. McGee at a Find Your Major workshop at LSU. When I was a freshman. I knew that I wanted to major in physics when I started college, but I quickly found myself failing my introduction to physics class. So I freaked out and thought, you know what, maybe I'm not cut out for this, and decided to attend that workshop. When I went there, I shared my story, and afterwards, Dr. McGuire approached me and asked me if I would consider sticking with physics a little while longer and maybe trying to approach my assignments and my tests in a little bit of a different way. So instead of changing my major, I did. I stayed with physics. Her and I began working together, and she began teaching me some of her strategies revolving around metacognition. I quickly learned that my method of trying to memorize material in order to pass assignments and tests just was not going to cut it. I had to really learn the ability to problem solve, and I essentially had to relearn how to study. I was reading chapters differently, making notes, and essentially completing homework assignments like I had to teach the material to someone else, with the thought behind that being, if you can teach it, then you really do know what you're talking about. After working with Dr. McGuire for a full semester, I ended up making an A in my physics course, And I went on to graduate with my bachelor's in physics from LSU with honors, all with Dr. McGuire's help. So I didn't quite know that going to one workshop was going to be so instrumental in setting me up for success throughout my entire college career. My life would be very, very different if I had not met Dr. McGuire that day and implemented the strategies that she taught me. She is absolutely phenomenal, and she really does have the golden ticket of information that's going to push you towards optimal success. So I hope that you enjoy the workshop today. Thanks for listening and best of luck. Bye.
Thanks, Dana, for visiting with us. And if you were to look at just homework, stuff that you do to participate in learning, right? If it's effective, that means that the activities that you do, the effort you put forth, produces the result that you intended. That's all being effective is. So ineffective is the opposite, huh? You produce actions and it brings you in the opposite direction that you wanted. So if we're looking at things that are effective homework strategies, right? They would create awareness of the process of learning. It's an active process. Oh, and you would monitor your own learning of the content, whatever the content is. And it would help you to set manageable goals and monitor your use of your attention and your use of learning strategies, ways of participating, ways of playing with your mental abilities. It would help you to self-assess how effective you are at reaching the goals that you set, right? What direction are you moving in? And that's your feedback. And it would help you to self-regulate your mental activity, how you're playing, right? You do more of this, less of that, right? Spend more time, less time, whatever it is, in response to the feedback you got from assessing yourself. So who's in control of your learning? Learning is always an inside job. It's you that's in control of what you learn and whether you learn it or not, based on how you play. So effective homework strategies, in essence, you're going to learn the material first before looking at the book's process where they explain how things work. You try to assess where you're at, what do you know? Because that's your feedback to know whether you need this or that, or you need to correct things inside. You would work example problems without looking at the solution or the answer to see how your process is working, what you learned so far, because you're going to gain something out of it. It may not produce the exact effect as you want, but you can't be all wrong and still be alive. It's that fact. There's your fact of effort. So you would check the answer, right, to see if the whole process was worked out right. And if it didn't work out right, the answer is not what's important. What's important is the process you went through to get to the solution. That's what's critical. And you couldn't have done the whole process wrong. So you're investigating what part of the process did you do well, and where did you fall into a pothole that steered you in a different direction. That's the whole point of learning, is you use the mistakes you make as stepping stones to get you to the goal that you said that you wanted. So you complete your homework problems as though they matter, as though your life depended on it, because it does. Who's going to feed you? You are. And if you can't make it come out of your hands, right, you can't give it away, put it outside of you to utilize it, then you're going to be a hungry person. Oh. So here's another student. He's not a newbie. This is Travis, and Travis is a third-year student. He's going to a four-year university, and life isn't so good. He's been struggling along, and he finally comes to a realization that it's an awareness. everybody gets to some point in their life that's like a line in the sand. And until they get to that point, they're willing to keep doing what they're doing, even though it feels bad. And at some point, they suffer enough that say, it's not worth it. Something has to change. And that point is just awareness, right? You know what you don't know. You know that you don't know it. May not be able to describe it, but you know it feels bad. So Travis got to that point. You can see his scores started off pretty ugly. And he was told, well, you have a reading comprehension problem. Well, this wasn't new news to him. He'd been told that many years. I mean, you go through the effort of reading, turning those symbols of we call letters, right, and put them into words, put the words into a sound, right? We say it, and we're reading it, and he could read the words, but they didn't make any sense to him. He didn't know what to do with it at that point. Well, reading comprehension is a skill that's taught in first grade. Wow, that's it. So you're still trying to figure out how to play in their playground, and you do good, you do bad, whatever, you get what you get, right? And you've been suffering with this for a while. So that was Travis's story. And the solution was, well, let's teach him how to learn. Let's teach him how to be effective at reading whatever it is he's reading. And so he did nothing but learn that strategy of reading, which we'll describe. It's a very simple process. And you see his result, his scores go up. So cause and effect. Oh, I do it this way and I get towards the goal I'm after. I do it the old way and I don't. Oh, I guess I'll go this way. It becomes pretty simple to look at. So a reading strategy that works is active reading. And means there's activity that you have to do inside mental processing, right? And you review the big picture of what it is you're trying to accomplish. What is it they're talking about? Just look at the headings, right? Get the big picture, then you'll fill in the details. So you look at you say you open a chapter, you look at the introduction, you look at the summary in the back of the chapter, and then you look at the bold words, just the little headings, and then any italicized words, right? They're trying to get your attention to these things. All you're doing is creating a structure to attach the details in. So when you tell your brain, hey, take out a folder, here's some things that we're going to put some stuff in, so that you can start attaching details like little threads of thought to that particular topic. And so it's organizing the material in your storage, right? Temporary storage or long-term, depending on how you play, and allows you to be able to go back and recall and build on what you already know. So when you're reading those bold prints and the italicized words, right, the summary, you have things that strike you as it sounds important, just that term, or it sounds like something you don't have a clue about. So you're writing down questions that you want the text to answer for you. So that gives you a reason to read. Hey, and if you get discouraged, it's because you don't see the point of the effort you're putting forth, right? So you're trying to create a reason to do the activity. And so an example, let's say that you were in a steering suspension class and you're reading a chapter that starts talking about two terms that you've never heard before, jounce and rebound. Well, what's the difference between jounce and rebound? I can say the words, but what do they mean? That's what we're trying to get out of it. So you want the reading to answer that question for you. Then you read one paragraph and stop, one paragraph at a time. And you're going to paraphrase, which just means that you're going to say what you just read in your own words. You're trying to see if you gain something out of that. Don't keep reading it one bite at a time, like eating on an elephant. You're not going to swallow it in one bite. You want to take one little bite and chew on it for a while, see what you got. Then you move on to the second paragraph and you repeat, right? You're going to summarize what you just read, and you're folding in what you read in that first paragraph. So you're still in the same topic, and you're going to start with what you previously read in that paragraph before and add in what you just read. Is that repetition? Yeah. And let's say there's another paragraph, so you read that one, and then you fold in the info from the previous two. So you've just summarized the entire topic that you've just read, and the repetition makes new neurological connections between cells in your short-term or long-term storage, depending on what it is that you're putting it in. That has to do, we'll cover that in just a little bit. So while you're in your mind, right, you're using your mental energy and you're reading something. You're using one skill to translate the symbols into words, the words into a sentence, and try to get the meaning behind that. And now you want to write down things that stand out to you. So you're taking notes while you're reading, rather than in class, because we're going to see in class is a completely different purpose for the activity. And if you're in class, right, whatever's going on in the room, you got to disconnect from that and go in your head and say what you're going to write. So you're repeating it up here, and then you're going to physically write it down, and then you connect back into the class. Well, what just happened while you were gone? You missed whatever the topic was. So the whole activity of going to class is a completely different purpose. So this active reading, right, is a strategy that works. It's very active on your part. So here's an activity. I want you to just to see what we're talking about. This is an article that describes a process. So I'm going to give you 15 seconds to read it. Just read it the way that you normally would read, and we'll see what happens here. Okay, well, let's stop what you're reading, and it may or may not make any sense at this point. That's okay. What if we did one simple thing of giving you a heading, bold print? Now read it again, same words, and see what happens in you. If you stop and notice what's occurring in you after you read with a title, what you just did was open a folder that said, oh, we're going to learn about flying a kite. That's a topic. And then you start attaching things in it in the process that describes it's how you fly a kite. Oh, wow. So that's just an example of what we're talking about. You're trying to create order in the activity of reading. So the impact of having a reading strategy, right? Jemiah was a first year student just starting off, and life wasn't working out so good because she was bringing what she knew, right? Her prior conditioning with her, and she wasn't passing the exams. She wanted to drop the course, which is a common effect of putting effort in and seeing the result ain't happening. Oh, it's going the other way. So, oh, the problem must be out there. It looks like it's out there. It looks like somebody else is controlling your experience, but actually it's not, because it's the unseen forces at play inside you. So her asked her, well, don't drop the course yet. What if uh, we just give it an opportunity with different tools? And said, well, how do you study? Oh, well, I read the material. How do you take notes? Well, I don't. Oh, okay. Now, this is very common to hear this from students. And she was reading like reading a novel. And that's typically what gets taught to you in elementary school. And reading a novel, you could read, let's say you're reading a novel, a storyline, or you're reading a newspaper article, and you only read every fifth word. You skip the other stuff and you can keep up with the storyline. Wow, totally different kind of reading. Now, in any technical material, any industry, any technical industry, if you misread or misunderstand the meaning of one word in a sentence, you're taking a different action as a result. It's completely different. Details matter. So you have to give your intellect the ability to process the information, to organize it in a way that it can recall things for you to utilize on demand. So the impact of having a reading strategy, right? We asked her to not give up, hang in there for just a little bit, but make one simple change and explain to her, right? And this is the day we had a book, right? Today we use e-textbooks, okay? But they say you'd open the book and you start reading a paragraph and then stop, right? And then summarize to yourself what you just read in your own words. Then reopen the book, right, and continue this way, make notes about it. Next paragraph, same thing like we told you, folding in the information. And just applying that one change, the result was her feedback was her grades, huh? The schools turn everything in grades. So her grades go up and confidence, she becomes confident. Where did confidence show up from? She manufactured it because the body will create the chemical reactions inside to be able to allow you to feel the effect of your actions, right? Cause and effect. And so the feeling of confidence showed up in her, right? You don't get confidence at the grocery store. It's not a thing you go get, right? It's a feeling that your body produces, allowing you to see the effect of your actions. So what's the difference, if there is any, between studying and learning? Sit with that for a moment. Studying and learning. Now, just to help you try to see it, if you had two tasks, for which would you work harder? One was to make an A on a test, and the other was to teach the material. For which would you work harder? And most students will see, when you stop and just sit with it for a moment, that they're completely different. Making an A on a test is regurgitating facts, is memorizing. As long as I put it in there and I can make it come out tomorrow, hey, I get a good grade. Wonderful. What happens next week? Well, it ain't there. It went into short-term memory because you didn't see the reason to attach this to long-term memory. Whenever you attach threads of learning from a word to, what its use is. So when you're going to teach the material, you got to own that. You have to become that. And it's going into automated long-term memory so that you can pull it up at will, and it's going to drive the show. Oh, so the action inside you is different when it's being used for short-term use, a short-term goal or a long-term goal. Who made the goals? Oh, you did. So some metacognitive learning strategies, just getting an idea of what we're talking about. Previewing the material, getting ready for active reading, right? That's writing questions down. What do you want it to answer for you? And then paraphrasing back one paragraph at a time, what you just digested from what was going on right here. That's actually one thing. Those 3 steps are one thing. It's active reading. And then, right, you're going to do the active reading and take notes. And take notes by hand, not on a gadget. It's both of them will get words down on the page, but the effect in you is completely different. When you write something down, right, you have just read it, the whole activity of active reading. Then you write something down that sounds important. When you write it down, you repeat it in your head, and then you create the words with a pen, a whole different structure. All of that is repetition of the same exact thing. When you type something on a keyboard or punch it with your finger like that, completely different process in your mind of getting those words down on a page. The effect is totally different in you, how it got there, right? Both of them great words. So the process of writing it down creates the repetitive actions that changes our programming inside. So using an e-textbook, I don't have the book because we don't use paper books anymore. Life has evolved, right? And I'm sure that many of you have taken some course of study, or you went to some kind of a class somewheres or an activity, and they said, well, this part's mandatory and this part's optional. Hey, if you want to own the material of whatever it is that you want to learn, it ain't optional. It's mandatory. So you determine that inside. And then all of that is you're doing it on your own. Then you go to class. All the active reading, that's the first time that you see the movie, of whatever it is that's going on. You notice what you notice. You bring those part that you noticed to class, right? And the questions that you had. And that's how you participate. Participation is not keeping the chair from moving. That's gravity. It's keeping the chair from moving. So participating is the answer is going to be in the room. We have everybody's energy that brought it in there. And whatever they learned, whatever they got from their own activities, right? They're going to bring that. They're going to bring the part they did right, the part that they didn't do quite right, the mistakes, all of that in there. And by the time that you mix it up, the activity of going to class is going to solidify the result and try to clarify what it was that you didn't quite have correct, or that you weren't certain about, or that you did see certainly and you presented that to the other people. All of that is a soup that happens in the dynamic of a classroom setting. And then you do homework on your own without the examples as a guide. The purpose is that's your feedback. You're assessing your ability to do whatever it is you're trying to accomplish on your own. How much did you get so far? And then when you look at the answers and they didn't happen right, or they wasn't quite the same, the answer is not what's important. What's important is the process you use to get there. And you can't have done it all wrong and still be alive. So you need to recognize what parts you did well and where you fell into a pothole or hit a bump and it steered you off. You got distracted. It steered you off in a different direction because you were following that train of thought. So the process, we'll call it research or investigating, right? What parts you did well, what parts you didn't. You're finding that spot, and literally in your mind, you're able to dissolve or cut that connection, that thread that you connected from this word to that process, whatever it was, and you reconnect it to a different spot. You have changed the instructions. You've changed the programming. Now, right, you're going to make a 4-lane highway out of that once you see that that's the process works. So that repetition, the investigative process, is deep, deep learning, right? Very ingrained. And then you're gonna teach the material, right? To your, yeah, to looking in the mirror, right? Teach it to your stuffed animal, your pet fish, it doesn't matter. You're trying to get it out from where you're playing with it in long-term memory. And when you try to get it out, to give it away, that's what teaching, you're trying to give it away. If it gets distorted or it changes somehow, you didn't quite have it clearly understood. That's why it changed when it come out. And there's nothing wrong with it. You just need to go back and get some more clarity on it. And when you bring it out, it'll feel right. When you give it out, it will come out the same way that you saw it inside. And when you work in pairs or in groups, especially when you have a lab class, right? You're giving what you see, you're putting it out there, and then you see or hear or feel the energy of other people, right? And there's a bunch of ways of seeing it. Our perspectives are different, and all of it adds together and blends together and assists everyone, the person giving what they see and the person hearing or receiving what the other person has given out. And that process is what solidifies it within us. And that is a huge, huge piece. Then we'll create practice exams. And that's your way of getting feedback of what it is that you learned and didn't learn. That's, again, feedback for you, not for anybody else, for you to be able to understand what you see and what you don't see clearly. Okay, so in teaching to learn, right, trying to see the effect of this. Well, Ty was a first-year student, and before he started reviewing for his exams, right, he would answer as many chapter questions as he could, because usually in a chapter in the back, there's going to be some questions about the topic, and it's for you to use to see the effect of your active learning, right? Your active reading in there and the activity, especially when we use Cengage materials, and we don't call it a book. God, it's so much more than that, because there's so many activities to do and simulations to do. There's ways of playing with the material so that you can see what you've gained and what you still need to work with. So he would go to his room, right? And he's trying to teach his material, and he's going to teach it to his pet fish. Okay, wonderful. And some stuff he would see that, well, whenever it came out, when he tried to teach it, it didn't sound right. It didn't quite have that same effect. So he went back and he worked on some more, and then he'd teach until it made sense, right? And there's his pet fish, right? So he started the process. He first encountered this, right, in the middle of September, and then a month later, right, look at his track record. It's changing because he's seeing the effect of the actions he's taking. Well, once you start to see the effect is getting you in the direction that you want to go, it becomes a no-brainer. You don't even think about it. It makes no sense to do what you were doing, because that would producing a different effect, right? So you're working towards the goal of whatever you created it is. And if your grades are feedback of how you're doing with the activities, then you'll want to keep doing that. That's just the whole point of learning how to learn. So here's a nursing student that is at a 4-year college, right? And she got to that point of it didn't make any more sense to keep playing the way she was playing. It felt bad. So she got to that point of awareness of saying, can you help me? Sounds good, but I don't get it. So she describes, right? I'm a nursing student. I'm struggling with in all my classes. Hey, you're learning how to use the tool of your body and your brain to be able to play in the world. But you got the programming that you got, right? So everywhere you go, whatever subject you put it in, it doesn't work so good or works really good. It's still you. You follow you everywhere you go. So she's struggling, right? And she's sought out tutoring. God, that's so misunderstood, the whole point of tutoring. tutoring comes from a fixed mindset that says, well, I got what I got, I'm broken, something wrong with me. There ain't nothing wrong with the hardware. It's the instructions that you're giving it inside. So a tutoring isn't trying to fix you. You're not broken. They're just trying to point in a direction of activities that you can do, way of playing inside that would change the effect. But it gets understood the way it gets understood. So she's willing to do something differently, which is a critical thing. Now, shortly thereafter, she starts getting really excited about what she's learning. She doesn't have any feedback yet, but she's really cranked up. Okay, so she's telling everybody that she knows in her family about this. So here, just a little bit later, she starts to get some results. Oh, here she gets a result, and she's still excited. She completed it in a certain amount of time, right? And she's seeing, and this is a huge part of the learning, when you see what you're doing while you're doing it. Now, eventually, that's where you'll get. Initially, you see what you're doing by seeing the effect right after the fact. And then you think back and recall, oh, I remember feeling like such and such during that, but you seeing it after the fact. That's what she's describing here. I saw all the answers and reviewed them, especially the wrong ones, right? I got overly excited. And by the time I got to question 5, right, I knew so much of the content, almost every right and wrong answer. She was shocked by how much she knows. Wow. Now, the excitement, her mind is really busy right now. And you make mistakes because you're so cranked up about what you see, right? She could have done differently, but she's learning from noticing how she was playing. So here's Frederick. He's a first-year nursing student, and the first semester that he starts off, oh, it doesn't look so good. Okay, and in nursing, the highest test is kind of like an overall exam to see how you're progressing, right, and what you're owning in that, and it doesn't look so good. So he hangs in there and he learns about how he functions, and then here comes the next semester, and life looks completely different. Wow, he's just playing with the same hardware differently. Yeah, it looks good. So how are these dramatic results possible? And these are just a few. The whole point is you're learning how to use your mental abilities. You're learning how to learn. It's not about what the subject, it's how you're playing with you as a tool inside that produces the result. So we're going to play with some numbers. Here's just another example for you to do as an activity. We're going to find sequential numbers. The word sequential just means like in a row, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or if it's an alphabet A, B, C, D, right, in sequence. So when I flip the screen, you're going to have 15 seconds to just look at the numbers on a page and try to count by finding the number from 1, 2, 3, right, and just see as high as you can go. Okay, so here we go. Okay, how high did you count? If you got past 3, you're doing really well. But regardless of how high you counted, did you notice that you were struggling with your attention because there were so many possibilities, there were so many numbers on the page, and you didn't quite know what to do with your attention to find them? Okay, and it's a normal process to notice how you're playing with it. It's not right, wrong, put that stick up, right? But what if we change things just a bit and we said, well, let's break it down into sections. So we break it into 4 quadrants, right? 4 portions, and say, well, let's start here, and we're going to put 1 number in each quadrant, in each quarter, and you move on. You're going to look at it. There's a pattern to this, and see how high you can count, right, in the same sequence. And I'll tell you when to start here. So go ahead. Okay, how high did you get? Your number that you went up to increased if you saw that there was a pattern to it, right? So if there was a 1 in this quadrant, and then you look down in the next quadrant, you saw a 2, and you looked over in the next quadrant, you saw a 3, right? And you started to see the pattern. There were less numbers for your attention to wander to. So the difference between the two attempts, once you saw that the information was organized in a certain way, there was a pattern to it, and it allowed you to focus your attention differently. It wouldn't wander so much before you saw whatever you were looking for. So that's just learning about learning. So what do we know about learning? Learning is active. And active learning happens, and you attach that in long-term memory. It's more lasting than passive learning. Passive learning is actually an oxymoron, which is a goofy term that they created to say these two words put together don't make any sense. They're contradictory, right? Passive is no action, right? It's stagnant. It's just stationary like this. And learning is an action. So if you're just keeping a chair from moving in a room where learning is happening in the room, some might get on you. We say it happens around you, right? And you might remember something that you heard when you leave, but next week is gone. It's not in there because, hey, it's short-term memory. Your mind goes flush every once in a while, and it's ready for some more stuff. And it didn't stay because of what didn't happen in you, what you did differently, how you played. So thinking about the process of thinking, what you're doing with it is what metacognition is. That's all it's talking about. And there are different levels of learning. And Bloom's taxonomy is something that doesn't get shown to people in high school. Most often, they have never even heard of it, or if they heard of it, it's kind of like Newton's law. People remember, oh, it's the guy about the apple, something about that. You don't remember what it is. So let's see what that is. Now, Bloom's taxonomy is just showing that there are different levels at which we play with the ability to learn, and it takes a different skill set inside. So just look at the blue words in the middle, right? We're like remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, creating, and read the little text on the side, the description of each one. We're going to play with that for just a bit. Now, when we teach people about Bloom's taxonomy, about the fact that there are different levels of learning, they just start to get it. It's like they didn't have a clue that there were different levels of learning. So when you were in high school, if you had to make an A or a B, what level of learning would you have to play at to be able to make an A or B in high school? Now, let's change the focus a little bit. Now you're in college. At what level do you think you'll need to operate at to make an A or B in college? Because college is playing a different game. We're playing a game for keeps. We're playing a game so that we can learn something and make it come out of our hands to be able to feed ourselves and our families. Oh, whole different reason for learning something. So here's how students answered. So in high school, students saw that their skill level of learning was really low. The game they were playing most was the parrot game. As long as they could regurgitate, say back what was that they just heard the teacher say, they would move them on to the next grade. Wow. So how about in college? What do students see the game is? So in college, students see that, oh, they have to play differently to be able to make an A in college. Whole different structure because the game is different. The reason for playing the game needs to be different. So how do you move from one level of learning to another? Anyone, right? There's actually a learning process. And once you learn what that process is, what that cycle is, it's a repetitive cycle, you can learn anything. So you're just trying to learn how to learn. And then you can point it in any direction you want. You can learn whatever you want. So this is just a picture that illustrates those 10 things that we talked about that are effective homework strategies, right? The previewing material before the class and the active, all those steps in the active reading. And then going to class, right? So that you can give back what you learned, right? And then clarify what you didn't quite have right. You're contributing, and so it's a dialogue back and forth between the people in the room, right? All the people. And then you review after class, you review what it was that you got out of class, adding it to what you learned on your own. And so you're going back into doing studying, right? On your own, you're applying it back. And then you're going to assess yourself and check your learning, right? What you got, what you didn't get, and you want feedback from that. So you're doing that on your own. So this is just being able to focus your attention and your abilities that you already have to create an effective outcome that you decide you want. So here's a student who attended some focused learning sessions, right? So she's learning how to utilize her mental abilities, and her feedback was her exams, and she used her final exam because it was comprehensive for her. And that was a good feedback tool that she used, and said, man, it was just absolutely wonderful. My results were outstanding. So one of the things, a word that we would use to describe how you play inside with your mental activities, again, talking about that formless energy, that formless source, that force at play in you. And we'll call it mindset, right? You may also have somebody talk about attitude, right? It's a common word, attitude, that people use. Get attitude, you can't show me your attitude. You can show me the effect of your attitude, but not the force at play in you, your attitude. So that's what the mindset that you have, or your attitude, really matters about whatever you try to point it towards. And so we'll just kind of make two piles here. We'll just say we either have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And a fixed mindset says, hey, what you got is what you got, And what you're getting is going to be the same. It's just, there's no changing it. That's just how it is. You're doomed for life, or you're blessed for life, whatever it is that whatever you learned in your yard, right, in your growing up time. And a growth mindset says that, hey, once I become aware of something, I can learn it if I want to. The only difference is, what direction are you looking? Whether you can or you can't. So just looking at inside, if you can't see the force at play, but you see the effect, here's the effects. So if you have, you see the hardware of your intellect is fixed, well, you would do these things: avoid challenges, give up easily, right? See effort is pointless because it's not giving you the effect that you want. There's a goal you want. You would ignore the useful feedback that might be happening, but it's probably just swimming in feedback that's negative, which is what produces that attitude. And you feel threatened by other people who get a different result. But when you have a growth mindset, right, you just see challenges like those rocks that we talked about that could be a stepping stone or an obstacle, right? You just see it as a challenge, and you persist, even though you don't get 100% of what you tried to accomplish, right? You see, this is a setback, no big deal. And you put forth effort till you keep moving in that direction. And that doesn't mean everything's going to work out perfectly for you, right? But the effect, you keep looking in a direction. And what that's describing is, we used to all believe that the sun revolved around the earth because we could see it going and coming throughout the day, and it disappeared and come back. So we thought we were the center of the universe until our perspective changed. We got a telescope and found out that it don't work like that. We're going around the sun. Oh, and we're revolving. So all that changed was how we saw what was happening. Oh, that's what we're talking about. And when your perspective is you're fixed, you're stuck with what you got, that's what the rules at play in you are saying. That's what you learned. Oh, so that hardwired programming that we say it's hardwired. Literally, you can cut the wires and change it and dissolve it under the right circumstance. That's where the repetition comes in. So do you think most students have a fixed or a growth mindset? Think about this from your experience in high school. Now, here's a scary thought. What mindset do you think most faculty have? Now, remember, I can only give what I have. If you're hungry and you want an apple and all I got is fuzz in my pocket, it ain't gonna happen. So I can only give what I have. And that it's not right, wrong answer. It's just where you're at, right? So here's a student that begins with a fixed mindset. And the first part of this is he's describing where he's at, how he sees life. Oh, I'm not so good at chemistry, right? And partially my grade point average is poor here. I'm emailing you because, hey, I think life sucks. I think you can fix me. Oh, well, that's the perspective of a student who doesn't know. But they got to that point of awareness in them that felt so bad, they're not willing to play the same game and keep getting the same effect. So there was a little crack of opening there. Bit of hope comes in. And the bottom portion of this, right, you see his track record wasn't so pretty. And then it changes, right? That awareness led him to ask questions, to seek help, right? And so he's open to learning about how he functions. So his perspective is completely different after the shift in mindset. You have to allow it to happen because you're always in control, even though it looks like it's something outside of you that's controlling it. And here's the findings. If you have, you're attending any kind of a class, and the person leading the class has a fixed mindset, the end result is the students do less effective work because of the mindset. You're going to become like the people you hang out with. And when the person leading a class has a growth mindset, that there's possibilities in there, and they're focusing in that, and they're encouraging students because they're trying to point in a direction of what's possible. And that catches on with people who have a growth mindset. And so the same students do differently when they have a growth mindset of a leader that they're involved with. So here's a graduate student that's being interviewed, and they're describing their come from, where they started off and how they saw life. So they came from a public high school and they struggled right when they get to college. And with the whole thing, not just the academic part, but just being in that environment, because the rules are different on that playground, right? And the environment he comes from says, well, my friends were saying, well, if you came from public high school, that's why life sucks over here. Oh, and if you came from that school over there, the haves and have-nots and all of that stuff that goes on, that's the reason. And then he goes, oh, well, the growth mindset chapter, when he started to see that was the force at play. See, before, when you thought that if you're smart, well, you're smart, you get what you get. And if you came from private school, well, that was better than if you came from public school. Now he knows that's not true because he sees it for himself. And so it continues on, right? When you first got a C in a neuroscience class, okay, the world was coming in. How many of you come from a background that, hey, it's the rules in your yard where as long as you made good enough for them to kick you out of that class and go to the next class, you were good to go. And other people lived in a yard that, hey, if you didn't make an A, there was some serious suffering going on here. And so whatever it was, he made a C, and that was just not acceptable. And he took that as a really, really poor sign that he's in the wrong place. So in his freshman year, he's just hanging in there. He's doing C's, and he's struggling to making A's in all his classes. All that changed, he got the same hardware. All that changed was how he was seeing it, how he was playing with it inside. So now he knows that just because you come from a public high school or this yard or that yard, your background, it doesn't matter. What matters is what you do with what you have, with what you know. And that you can't make anybody see. You have to see it for yourself. That's the way learning works. So here's an LSU graduate student, first year, doesn't look so good, right? They're struggling like crazy. And then they learn about how their mind works and what's possible. And they begin working with that at the end of the semester here. And then here's the next year, and it looks different. Wow, here's their results. Why didn't it all work out in every class and just be a perfect end of fairy tale solution? Well, how long have you been playing with that old programming? So the longer that you work in that automated programming that you learned, regardless of what it was, right? You snip here, you snip there, you change this, you change that, and there's still other stuff that doesn't work out quite so well. So it's a process. Learning is a process, and you can rewrite anything. It sometimes works out to where it's almost like flash erase and you start over again, and it's that dramatic. But for most people, it's little incremental pieces that you learn and you gain, and they get more excited, and it happens more, and they got distracted by this, and then they move on. don't give up. You have to hang in there to see the effect, So here's somebody from a college just around the corner, right? Xavier University, and he's struggling. He starts off in the fall, and he's just struggling. He really wants to see. He's got an idea that this is really good, but get this. He's tried to end up with a decent grade. Oh, how many of you heard what is decent grade? Doesn't sound the same in everybody's yard, huh? So if he's going to Xavier, right, you're gonna have to put a lot of effort forth to pay for that. And they're going, man, my grades are not showing the result of the effort that we're putting forth to this. So he's going, man, maybe you can point me in a different direction. So he's got that opening, that awareness inside. So here's just a little bit later, right? He sees the first result after he starts learning, and it changes dramatically. So he knows something shifted in him. Here's just a little bit later, a few weeks later, his numbers are changing again. So as he gets results, right, you get more engaged and want to play more. You got feedback that says, hey, that must be a good direction to go in. I see the effect is in the direction I'm pointing it. So in the conclusion, right, we can significantly change the result, the outcome, by teaching people how to learn. So you're just learning how your mind already works. It's not like we're creating something new. It's like how many of you have bought a product? Let's say you bought a tool, you bought some gadget, and you open the package, you chunk out those paper in a way, and you start playing with it, and it doesn't quite work like you thought it was going to work. And then eventually you get frustrated, and you take that stuff you threw in the trash can out and find the instructions, and you go, oh, this is how you play with it. We all do that. So this is the first tool. You got to learn how it works. So you're just learning how your mind already works, and the direction you point your attention changes the results you get. You're going to get more of whatever direction you point it in. It works equally powerful in both directions. So when you encourage students in the direction that you know works, rather than judging their initial performance, because especially in entry-level classes, God, we do it to ourselves, we do it to other people, right? That finger of you can't do that, you're not doing that, right? That finger of blame. What else can a person do but what they know how to do until they're open to learning? There's no blame here. The blame game does nothing beneficial for anybody, the one pointing the finger or the one being pointed at. So you encourage people to hang in there and just keep pointing in the direction of what works, and remind students to hang in there, persist. That's all persist means. Even though you don't accomplish everything that you set your mind to, your goal to, it's those unseen forces at play, that prior programming that you've been playing with for so long. That's what's running the story until you notice, and then you start to twist to change the results by cutting part of that process that doesn't work and attaching it differently. That's rewriting the program. And repetition is what does that. And then encourage the use of these metacognitive tools that we're pointing at. And that closes that gap where people don't play so differently. We're all unique in how we're going to play with things. We're not talking about what to think. We're talking about how you play with the faculties that you have. And there's not right, wrong way. There's just more effective and less effective. That's all there is to it. So let's go back. Why can a bumblebee fly? It looks like everything's working against him. Because it's focused on I can rather than I can't. No different than you. So this book by Sandra McGuire, right, is written to students about their own learning process rather than being written to teachers about how to teach people how to learn. So this is something, if you're interested, right, that you can pick up. The book is not going to change things for you. It's how you read the book and whether there's an opening in you to explore the possibilities that she points to. So how can Delgado Community College, as a people group, as an entity, an organization, achieve its mission and realize its vision? Well, most of the people that I interact with, whether they be students or teachers or staff or faculty, it doesn't matter. We don't even know what the vision or the mission is. So we're gonna look at that in just a minute. So we teach students how to learn. And then it doesn't matter what the topic is, they can get it. The issue is, what are they using to play with? What tools are they using to play with? So teach them how to learn. We can help students develop the right mindset, that attitude, that formless energy, that force that's at play inside in pointing their attention in one direction or the other. That is all mindset is. And encourage students to implement these strategies that work, these ways of playing with your ability that you already have, ways of playing with it that we know lead to success in what you determine your goals are. So the mission statement at Delgado, as a college, as a group, as an organization, right? We provide a learning-centered environment, not a parking lot for you to rest your butt. Through different ways, face-to-face classes, distance education, to prepare students to be well prepared to do what you say you want to do, to attain your goals, not ours, your goals, to think critically, that higher level of learning, and demonstrate the ability to be a productive student, to be a productive citizen in your community, whatever that's at. And our vision, what we aspire to. As a college, we are a diverse group of people, come from all flavors of life, all kind of different yards, right? We are dynamic, we take action. We look at the big enchilada, the big picture, right? A comprehensive community college in all different facets. And we're committed to students succeeding at what they say they want through innovative teaching and learning, innovative playing, because the world at play is constantly moving and dynamics evolving, and we have to continue to evolve with it to serve our community and the values that we hold. We have to see the value, the worth in human beings just because they exist, not because what they do or how they play, but because they exist. And you can't give what you don't have. And if you don't see it, you can't give it to other people. That respect that's due them because they exist. And learning is a lifelong process. From when you open your eyes in birth till they put you in the ground, we evolve because the world evolves around us. And we're committed to excellence in teaching and making learning accessible to people who want to. And meeting the needs of the workforce. That's our goal, is assisting people who want to play in the world and feed themselves and feed their families. The workforce constantly is changing and evolving. The products that they sell, the products that they work on, whatever it is that you want to play in, is constantly changing. So we as a college have to change and evolve to meet the needs of the workforce. And the melting pot that we are of a culture, whether you be student or faculty or staff or administration, right? All of our jobs, we value creating trust for the public, the people in large in our community. And our responsibility, our response to that trust engulfs the community as big as you see it, whether it be the local community, the rock you're standing on, the yard you're in, the community, the state, the nation. We have a global economy. We all affect each other, regardless of where your yard is at. So those elements, I'll call it, of how you function are at play. And to give you some something to take away from you, in all of our Canvas classes that I have on Canvas in the syllabus page, which is where I park information. So it's labeled here, metacognitive effective learning strategies. So when you click here, it's going to open up a document that has just a handout of a few of the highlights of the slides that you saw today, right? And for you to be able to reference as you go back and apply these things, right? And there's Bloom's taxonomy, and then the learning cycle and mindset. And then if you look at this particular page, kind of summarizes things. Okay, passive learning and active learning. Passive learning, that's when you keep a chair from moving and learning is happening around you. You pick up a few things, but it flush and it's gone. It's in short-term memory. Action didn't happen in you, because active learning is happening in you because of what you're doing or not doing, right? And the metacognition, that word, is just pointing to what direction is your attention pointed. Are you looking at what you want to create for yourself, seeing that you can, like the bumblebee? Or are you focused on what you see that you need, that's missing in your life, what you can't do, all your limitations? And that rock that we talked about is now a stumbling stone rather than a stepping stone. So it just depends on what direction you're pointing in. And then here towards the bottom is just those 10 things. And the first 3 are actually just describing one thing: active reading. There's 3 steps in active reading and what you're doing. That's just start there. If you do nothing but that, you'll start to see a difference in the effect that happens in you. And then the last one is just a picture of the book that is written to students. So if that's something that interests you, right, it's available to you to be able to pick up. So that's what we have today for you. And I would challenge you to just start there. Take that aspect of active reading and change what you do inside when you attempt it, and notice the result. And the feeling that you generate, that your body's going to generate through chemical reactions to show you, is it worth it, right? If it brings you the effect that you're looking for, you can feel a lot better than if it doesn't bring you the effect, right? So the feeling is what's driving us underneath all that. So that's what we have. The people at Delgado are here to support you, but it's you that does the work. We're just pointing in the direction that works for you. Thank you.